What's going on, everybody? This is Cody, the home theater hobbyist, and today I have my full review of the Cambridge Audio SX lineup. This is their latest lineup. It has a new surface finish and also new logo. Now I have the stand mount SX60s, that's these two bookshelf speakers here, the center channel SX70, and the subwoofer, the SX120. So they sent me a nice 3.1 setup, and I've spent the past few weeks just kind of listening to them with both movies and music, and I want to give you my impressions in this video, so let's get to it. Before we get too far in this video, if you want to purchase anything from Cambridge Audio, including any of the speakers in the SX lineup, use those links in the description below. Also, if you enjoy product reviews, unboxings, talk about streaming media, and basically all things home theater, why don't you click that subscribe button and hit that notification bell so you'll be alerted anytime we upload new content. So here we are with the SX lineup from Cambridge Audio. Now they have a couple other speakers that I don't have here. That includes the SX80 floor standing speaker and a smaller bookshelf speaker known as the SX50. But I'm happy because they sent me all of these speakers, so I get a pretty good idea of how this sounds. And like I said, I'm going to talk to you about that in this video. And the first thing we're going to talk about is the overall design. From a design standpoint, as you can see, the SX line has a nice matte black surface finish. You can see it on the front of the 70 here, on the rear of the 60 over there, and it's also on the top, sides, and bottom of all the speakers. But you can also see they come with the cloth grills on them, and they cover the entire front face. That's a black cloth grill, and at the bottom is the Cambridge Audio logo down there in sort of a silver, mirror kind of surface finish, a little bit more silver than mirror, I guess, but it has nice pop and contrast compared to the black cloth face. And to pull the grills off, you just give them a little tug up and down the grill, because it has a pin and cup design. So you have 4 pins, 1 on each corner, along with 4 cups, again, 1 on each corner, and that allows you to push the grill in and it stays in nice and secure. The grill itself is nice and sturdy, no issues there, and you can see through it just a little bit. You can probably see my shirt right there. But once you get it off, you get to see that front face on the SX60 like I have here. And again, you can see that it is matte black. But they have the tweeter driver port design on the SX60 with a driver tweeter driver design on the 120. And what I like about it is they have this matte, it's kind of dark gray surface finish that surrounds the different elements, and I think it looks really cool because it's kind of matte against this matte surface finish. I just like the way it looks. But then they finish it off with that Cambridge Audio logo right down there at the bottom of the speakers, and it's right there on the 60, but that Cambridge Audio logo is also in a sort of not a dark gray, more of a light gray on the surface finish, and I think it looks really cool. I really like that contrasty look. That's kind of a, I don't know, kind of smooth smoke kind of look to it, or maybe even if it was like a superhero with the mask, the mask would be matte black or something like that. And I know I'm geeking out on this one, but I really do like the way that looks. I think it looks really, really cool. Now, moving on to the rear of the SX60 and SX70 center channel, as you can see here and here, they both have a single pair of binding posts. Now, those binding posts accept all major speaker connections, including bare speaker wire, banana plugs, and spade connections. Now, one thing I do want to point out about the SX70 is it's not ported at all. This is an entirely sealed cabinet. Now let's move on and talk about the SX120 subwoofer by itself, because it has a few more features that I want to get into. As you can see, it has the same black cloth grill with the Cambridge Audio logo down there at the bottom, and it's also held on with the same pin and cup design. Now the pins on this one are just a little bit longer and the cups are just a little bit deeper, so it takes a little bit more effort to get this off, but otherwise it's fine. The frame itself is nice and sturdy, and as you can see, there's that 8-inch driver right there up front, and the Cambridge Audio logo is down there on the bottom. And again, it has that same nice surface finish all the way around the front face, and the Cambridge Audio looks really cool. Now on the rear of the SX120, as you can see, this is where all the controls are and the ports. It has dual about 2-inch in inner diameter ports here on the left hand side, and on the right hand side are again all the controls. Starting here on the left of the controls, you have the phase adjustments, either 0 or 180 degrees, that switch is there. And then you also have the on off auto switch. And the way it works is when you put it in auto, the subwoofer turns on whenever it gets a signal from your AV receiver integrated amplifier. And then if it receives no signal, it will turn off after 10 or 15 minutes. And I typically leave all of my subwoofers in auto mode. That way I don't have to go around back and, fumble with turning them on every time I want them on or something like that. Now, next to that is the crossover adjustment that you can do in the subwoofer itself. Now, typically I set my crossovers in my AV receiver and then leave this at like 150 Hertz or something like that, and let the AV receiver kick it in at 80 Hertz. And I'll talk a little bit more about that for this subwoofer in the sound quality section. Next to that is the volume knob, and you got 0 to max there. And then you have your inputs. You can either do line inputs with a single mono, and they label that here, or you can do dual line level inputs or RCA inputs if you want. Down there on the bottom is the power cord. So you plug in the power cord and plug it into the wall because this is a powered subwoofer. Now I'm going to move on and play an audio sample just so you can hear that these speakers definitely make sound and to give you some idea of how they sound. Now let's talk about my test setup. To test these speakers, what I used was my Denon AVR-X 4400H as my sound processor and the Monoprice Monolith 7-channel amplifier as the amplification. Now I tested both movies and music just to understand the sound profile of the speakers as, separate as, the stand mounts and the center channel of the subwoofer, but also as a group. Now I'm going to rank these speakers in a few different categories from 1 to 5, 1 being the absolute worst and 5 being the absolute best. Now the first category I'm going to rank is design, and I give the SX60 and 70 a 4 out of 5, while I give the 120 a 3.5 out of 5, and I'll explain that in just a moment. Now starting with the 60s and 70s, I really like the way these look with the grill off. I like this matte surface finish that surrounds the drivers and that logo down there on the bottom. I think it just looks really cool against this matte black surface finish. Now the whole line is very boxy and very square. It's got sharp edges and sharp corners and stuff like that, and I wish it was a bit more rounded, but I think it looks really cool. I like the tweeter driver port down here set up because it's got nice flow through it, and the same thing, nice flow through there. So I like the way this looks. So I really don't have any issues, and I give it a 4 out of 5. But moving on to the SX120, I just don't really like the way the driver here looks. I mean, it just doesn't look very good in my opinion. It doesn't have the nice matte surface finish around it the same as this. I mean, there's a surface finish there, but it's not quite the same. I think it just loses a little bit of pop. And to be honest with you, with the 120, I'd probably rock it with the grill on because I think it looks better with the grill on. But the thing that it has going for it is it's nice and compact. I mean, this is 8-inch subwoofer, so it's going to fit in a lot of small places, and that is a definite plus. So I give it a 3.5 out of 5. Now let's talk features and controls, and I have to give this line a 3 out of 5 because you get all the basic features that you need out of a speaker. I mean, with the SX70 and 60 here, you get single amp here that allows you to connect all your major speaker connections, so that's a definite plus. You can't bi-amp it, but single amp is just fine. You also get port plugs and feet with the SX60, so you can plug in the ports in the front if you need to. Now with the SX70, you don't get anything extra, you just get the grill, but again, that's all you really need. Moving on to the SX120, you get all the basic controls and features that you need in a subwoofer, including crossover adjustment, phase adjustment, auto on-off, and of course, volume adjustment. Now, you don't get any wireless subwoofer access or anything like that, but the good news is you can buy the SVS wireless subwoofer kit and plug it in to the connections back here, and it definitely works if you need that for your setup. But otherwise, they give you basically everything you need in this set. So from a features and control standpoint, I give it a 3 out of 5. Now, let's talk about the big category, and that is sound quality. Now, I give the SX60s a 4 out of 5. while I give the SX70s a 3.5 out of 5 and the SX120 a 3 out of 5. And I'm going to talk about each of these separately, and then I'm going to talk about them as a whole. So let's start with the SX60s. They have a nice full-bodied sound to them, especially when listening to music. I really enjoyed them. Their mid-range is nice and prominent, vocal sound reasonably natural, and you get decent bass. But the high end isn't as prominent. It sounds pretty good, but it's not as prominent. So if you're listening to, let's say, classical music and you've got a lot of violin playing and it's really high strings, it's not going to be as prominent as the mid-range and the bass is going to be, but it does do a decent job. The soundstage is reasonably wide and there is depth to the image. The bass sounds decent. I mean, it's got decent detail, but it's not going to blow you away. But I do like the bass from the 60s. Moving on to the SX70, this has a nice warm sound to it. It's got a nice mid-range that's pretty strong and decent highs. Now it doesn't have a whole lot of bass, but honestly with this center channel you're not really looking for a whole lot of bass. This is going to handle the bulk of your vocals when you're watching movies, and vocals sound reasonably natural. It's not super natural, like I said, it's a bit warm, but it does sound good. The soundstage overall is not super wide. I mean, this isn't a very large center channel, so you're not going to get, a sweeping, wide soundstage. But again, it handles it well and it blends very, very well with these other speakers. So I give it a 3.5 out of 5. Now let's talk about the SX120s. And what I found with the SX120s is it plays deep, pretty detailed bass. It'll play down to around 30 hertz or so. But when you're watching movies that play down to really extreme lows, like let's say Live, Die, Repeat, Edge of Tomorrow, that's kind of the name of that movie, the opening scene where it has those really deep notes, I did hear a bit of port noise, but honestly it compares pretty favorably to another 8-inch subwoofer that I have, the Energy Take Classic. I actually like the way that 120 sounds better than the Take Classic, because the Take Classic actually does have a little bit of port noise and it is front ported, so you can definitely hear it a lot more than you can with the 120. Now as a package, all of this sounds great together. It's got great tonality. You can tell it all comes from the same manufacturer, and I really, really like that. I found that setting the crossover setting at 80 hertz in my receiver and setting the SX60s to small was probably about the best blend here. I did set them to large, the SX60s that is, to large, and I did like that. It gave you a nice full-bodied sound. But if you don't want to do that because you don't want this playing full range, because I mean it doesn't really play full range, like I said, it'll play down to about 40 hertz or so, you can set it to small and get a good crossover at 80 hertz. I tried 120 and there was a little bit too much separation between this and the subwoofer, and 60, again, it just sounded just a little bit off, but 80 I found was the sweet spot between crossover setting between the 120 and 60s set at small. So what's the downside of the 120? Mainly, I found that although it plays deep and detailed and matches very, very well with this package, I think it just needs a little bit bigger driver, like a 10-inch or even a 12-inch to really allow you to feel the bass, because it's pushing more air. When I was listening to this, I kind of thought of the old Motorhead saying, there's no replacement for displacement. And that saying is basically saying, you get a larger cylinder head, you get more air, more heat in there, you'll push the piston down and you'll really get that power stroke, right? Well, in this case, I think if you had a bigger driver, you could really feel the bass just a bit more. And like I said, tonality wise, it sounds good, but I just wish it had a little bit more air, it could push a little bit more air. Now let's talk value, and I give the 60 and 70 a 4 out of 5, while I give the 120 a 3.5 out of 5. The SX60 is $299 and the 70 is $179, and that represents pretty good value for the sound quality and build quality that you get. While at $299 for the 120, I feel like that's just a little bit expensive, because I mean, you can probably pick up like the RSL Speedwoofer 10S for right around $349, maybe $399, something like that, and get a bit more output. So that's why I give these a 4, because I think they sound good for the price. But this, I think you can get just a little bit more subwoofer for just a little bit more money, and so I give it a 3.5 out of 5. So to wrap this up, I think Cambridge Audio has done a great job with the design. I like the look of these speakers with that new logo down there. The subwoofer, I would probably, like I said, rock it with the grill on like I have here, but otherwise I think it looks really good. You get all the nice basic features that you need out of speakers and a subwoofer. There's nothing flashy or fancy here, and honestly at this price point I wouldn't expect everything to be super flashy, right? So I think they've done a great job with this. The only downside is, again, the subwoofer. I think it sounds good tonality wise, but I just wished it pushed just a bit more air. But otherwise I think they've got a solid system here, and I do recommend it. If you want to purchase anything from the SX series or anything else from Cambridge Audio, please use those links in the description below. And if you like this video, hit that like button, subscribe, and also share this with your friends. Thank you guys for watching. We'll talk to you next time.